limit your comments to no more than a minute at a time, and please don't be offended if we move on. Finally, all of our calls are recorded for the website, so you can go back and review them if necessary. We also, after the call, will send out the recording, a transcript of the chat, and any other resources that might be shared. Thank you, Jeff. Next slide, please. I'm going to let our moderators introduce themselves, but I will kick us off. My name is at the bottom. I'm Shona Vaz, and I am currently serving as the secretary on the APPIC Board of Directors. In my day job, I am the training director of the psychology internship, fellowship, and externship programs at the University of Chicago Medical Center. Thank you. Jeff, you're muted. Jeff, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. See how technology works. Got to keep things going. Wanted to welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Baker. I'm Executive Director for APPIC, and really happy to see the 45 participants online today for our Zoom call. And we hope that this is helpful and productive. I've been here at this position for the last 10 years and hope to have some engaging conversations today about some options for socialization.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we can engage in very good discussions. My name is Yaira Oquendo Figueroa. I'm the Director of Training for Behavioral Health at Salud Family Health Centers. It's a primary care clinics in Colorado. That's my day job, and here I'm serving as an APPIC board member, just a couple of weeks in.
And hello, everyone. Wayne Siegel. I am chair of APPIC's postdoctoral committee. I'm a former member of the board and training director at the Minneapolis VA healthcare system.
Thank you all. So we have sort of organized our thoughts when we started to prepare into a series of questions. And we're each going to sign up to facilitate discussion around 4 questions. So I'm going to let Jaira kick us off here.
Great. Yeah, I think that during these times of COVID-19, a lot of things has changed in the way that we do things with our onboarding and offboarding processes. So pretty much it will be fantastic if some of you can share your experiences saying goodbye, how graduations and those activities has been, and what have been your ideas or the implementations of new ways of doing welcome meetings and gatherings, online gathering. So I would like to hear a little bit about what you have been doing. It looks very different, graduations and welcomes.
Well, my favorite story is the training director that sent champagne and chocolates to her graduates, delivered to their doorstep, and then they had their virtual graduation ceremony. So I thought that was quite innovative and interesting and a little expensive for my taste, but sounds great.
Thank you, Jeff. Actually, the graduation of my postdoc is tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to your ideas.
The last time we did this, Anne Lagis shared that she sent a charcuterie board, champagne, and gourmet cupcakes to all of her interns, and then they all and their certificates in the mail. So when they announced their names, they were able to hold up their certificates.
That's very nice.
This is Wayne. In Minneapolis, my interns and postdocs had been off-site since the middle of March, and we have not seen each other in person since then. And we decided to have in-person gathering outside. We have a very large covered pavilion on the back of the hospital, and people were comfortable with that. So we ordered individual pizzas for everybody. And, you know, it was about like maybe an hour and a half. And really hot and sticky, but people just, it was really nice to see people. And, you know, with rubber gloves on, we handed out certificates. So it was nice to be able to celebrate that. It was, you know, emotional because of all that we had been through this year.
Hi, everyone. This is Siobhan. I'm the director of our Mid-Atlantic Internship Consortium, which is a partially affiliated internship with the Chicago School in DC. We actually have our virtual completion graduation ceremony for the interns tomorrow. And so one of the things that we did was we also sent gifts in the mail. Not the champagne and chocolates. I wish I had thought of that. But instead I sent little of the succulent plants, and it's like a DIY kind of put together kit, and it comes with a candle and things like that, which if you're looking for it, you can find it on Etsy. And it had a message about kind of nurturing your skills and growing as an intern. And so we had that delivered to each intern's house, and then their certificates will be presented tomorrow virtually. We did a signing of all of them in advance, so we'll be able to show them on the Zoom, and we have one of the students saying a couple words, and we also did a tribute video. So I had faculty and the supervisors and the interns all answer some prompts and then put it together as a video so the interns could take that with them.
Hey, this is Jen Crockett in Baltimore with Kennedy Krieger. So for our interns, we did a very similar thing as Wayne described. We have a school at our institute, so it has like the perfect circle in the front where the buses pull through. So we actually lined those with stations of supervisors, of course, masked and gloved. So we had the certificate station and we had the food station, and maybe we had a beverage station. And they were able to either drive through or walk through depending on their comfort level, and pick up their stuff and then go back to their apartments. And that evening we had a virtual event. We actually did some video footage of the drive through or the walk through that we were able to show that night on the virtual event. So it was just really, really nice to be able to, you know, in the year with some physical contact, because similar to Wayne, we had not seen each other at all since mid-March. And then we're going to repeat the same thing next week for our postdocs who are leaving.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Feel free to put comments in the chat as well, and we'll try to respond to those if you have those. I have to show you my favorite gift when I was a departing intern from many decades ago. It's actually a recording of Sigmund Freud from 1938 that my training director gave to each of us. And it's pretty interesting to hear what was going on back in those days, but kind of unique gift and very nice of him to share that with us.
Jeff, I thought it was a mixtape, and then I thought, oh, that would have been in the 90s, maybe not.
Very nice.
How about orientation? Have people started orienting their new trainees and welcoming them? And how's that going?
Hi, this is Mary Mendoza Newman. I'm at Stanford University. I'm also an APPIC board member, popping in and I'll be popping out because I'm in the middle of orientation right now. They just arrived on Monday. We're doing it all virtual with the exception of the first day. So we had everyone come in. They were given specific instructions to just follow all of the safety and health guidelines. I checked in with them. What I did do is I had them pre-order lunch. And so everyone brought either a lawn chair or a blanket, and we sat outside and had a picnic. And that was the first time we were able to take our masks off. And then later, the next day when I checked in with them, I always check in with them the following morning about reflections throughout orientation. And they all said how much they appreciated being able to be in person because the rest of the time is going to be virtual. and how significant it was to be able to take off our masks and see each other. And someone even commented like the shapes of our noses and the way that we smile, that there were just these small things that were really missed with the masks. So one of the things that we've agreed on is to, because they're all willing to do this, is to come in at least once a month to be together. And so I'll probably think about maybe along the lines of what we're talking about today, socializing and how we can come together around maybe a common theme or some project or something to do. So yeah, so far so good. It's day 4, and I will be meeting with them at 2 o'clock my time. So I'll be stepping out a little early.
Hi, this is Samuel. Could I ask a quick question? And I don't mean this to be a bit of a buzzkill. How are all of you sort of addressing at some level equity with respect to kind of how much supervisors or training programs are paying for these things, as far as not going above certain thresholds? And how do you even manage that when people are doing this kind of on their own? And I think that's the way this goes. But we have some question at this site around making sure that gifts or anything monetary or non-monetary sort of stays within an equitable fashion across a large number of trainees. That's where I'm going with this. Thank you.
Yep. Sam, this is Wayne. I was typing a response, but I'm glad that you asked it publicly, because I believe other facilities outside the VA probably have limits on gift giving. I think there's different interpretations about what constitutes a gift, but clearly there are probably boundary issues on how much or how extensive a celebration you may do, whether it's food, chocolate, wine. Clearly, we didn't do any alcohol at our graduation because we were on our federal grounds. But I think that people just need to be kind of thoughtful about that and run that through the administration. Wonder if other people kind of have thoughts or have run into those issues.
It's been a real challenge for us because we have no discretionary budget at this point. So while we previously used to have money in the budget for, lunches for orientation, we're not allowed to spend any of that. So I ended up having to pay out of pocket for breakfast for orientation myself, which, we don't have a big training program. So it was okay. I was prepared to go to Costco. But I think that as we do more events over the course of the year, we're thinking about sort of engaging the other faculty to participate as much as they feel able. So I think the next event that we're planning is a picnic outside. And people can either bring their own food or bring something to share. And, we bring lots of hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies and things like that.
Okay, are we about ready to move on to the next question? Next slide.
Yes.
Any other responses you want to make to any of the, there's some very good ideas in the chat there, if you all take a chance to take a look at that. Some inexpensive favors were given, as well as donations or collections taken from staff to provide gifts, those kinds of things. So some real good ideas in the chat as well.
So I believe this is kind of my section. Let me move things so I can actually see it. So having to do with kind of social distancing, with your trainees being offsite or mostly offsite, practicing good physical distancing, how can we as training directors facilitate socialization with others and other training staff? And so socialization here, I think can be thought of in 2 components. It's how do your trainees kind of interact and socialize with each other? And then how do they kind of socialize and interact with the training faculty? And, you know, maybe up until COVID, I and maybe others took that for granted. That it just naturally occurred, and we had certain functions and things that occurred throughout the year, or they would stop by my office. But when those things stopped happening, we had to be more purposeful about that. So wondering what people have done to try and kind of address these issues and what's worked and what's not worked. Oh, I know everybody's been struggling with this, so, and there's probably some great ideas out there.
I used to have a monthly meeting with mine. Now it's more like a weekly meeting. We also have been, there are other intern times that they had in their schedule prior to COVID. Like they have a once a month mandatory intern lunch. And so I've encouraged them to continue to do that. They're not allowed to schedule any patients during that time. Our department has organized some bigger events like town halls where we have questions that people have and about the future and returning to work. And I think that that socializes them not just to each other and to us, but to all of the other providers in the department and the staff. And I like that is a little bit of a unique opportunity because they wouldn't have that and get to know as many people if we were all in the office.
We provide training in the provision of supervision, and one idea that came up is that all of the supervisors will be giving their supervisees a virtual tour of the clinic before they start. So the people who are starting first will be giving a virtual tour to all of the trainees individually. And that way will be a good time for them to interact with one of the team members of the training cohort.
Dr. Rodzinka had some good suggestions in the chat box there if you get a chance to take a look at that, but making sure that people that are Zooming all day long take healthy breaks, and she has organized it so that she will take out some folks for a walk, go out for a walk during the day. Even though they're on site, they're still Zooming. So great idea to self-care and to remind people to do that.
One of the things that we did is one of my staff last week organized a Zoom like trivia night, and all of the interns came on, and there was a handful of staff that joined as well too. And it was kind of fun, and you could see people's pets and homes to the extent that they were wanting to kind of share that, and people got a little silly. And then we're teams in breakout rooms, and so we're going to try and do maybe once a month like some type of game or something like that, which those of you who know me, maybe that's not like my thing, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Seems like it's another opportunity to find the creative spirit in your training staff, because I would have a hard time coming up with things like that as well, but I bet my colleagues could do.
I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, the other in terms of weekly meetings for now, we are requiring them to, interns and postdocs separately, to have weekly lunch meetings with each other that there's no staff member in, and they can do whatever they want during that time, but as Shona mentioned, it's protected. And then with supervisors, we're encouraging them to still be very mindful of boundaries, but maybe also recognizing that they need to try and get to know people a little bit better, since these side conversations that we often have just don't happen as naturally.
So Wayne, that's protected time for the trainees. Is it optional or is it required?
It's required. That, I guess, if someone wanted to opt out, we, you know, but we don't want them scheduling patients or other meetings during that time. And it's not that it's not a therapy group that we're mandating them to. It's just a time for them to hang out, and they can even consult with each other on cases which they have normally done in person in the years past pretty regularly, but that will be hard to do nowadays.
Well, I know trainees are high need achievers, and sometimes they might look at that as, oh, I don't want to participate in fun time. I want to show them how dedicated I am, so I'm going to schedule patients or readings or something like that. So it's good to have that as a protected time and remind them what it's for, as opposed to, this is not punishment. It is something that we feel we value and want you to continue to participate in. Since you can't go to lunch together anymore or can't hang out after work anymore, this one is a pretty good option.
Yep. Mandated fun during internship.
And some people need that.
All of our interns from last year actually stayed local. It's a very, very unusual situation for us. So we weren't able to do it at the very beginning of the year, but we have a picnic in a couple of weeks for last year's interns and our new cohort to get together in person. We've arranged some Zoom meetings for them, but we're going to do an in-person event outside.
And Dr. Livesay just made a really good point too about her last group all came in together and had bonding time and time that they developed. So it was a little bit easier to transition to Zoom. And now she's wondering about this new cohort that's coming in virtually. How was that going to create? How can you create this bonding, this cohesiveness that is a little bit more challenging in virtual times versus and I think there's been some good ideas so far, but wondered if other people had thoughts about that.
So this is Tabitha Blunt at UT Health. We started at the beginning of July, and we have a fairly large cohort of 10. And we're definitely seeing that this group is struggling to be as cohesive as our past groups have. We initially kind of volunteered to provide Skype time for them to hang out and get to know each other. They didn't take us up on that, so we're now actually kind of mandating that they do it. And so we've had to move away from it just being like, hey, here's an option on how you guys get to know each other, to like, hey, you guys, we're going to get to know each other while still trying to respect boundaries.
I think people do need that urging or that pushing to do that, because it's again, they're there to prove something, especially in the early part of the year, to show how adequate they are or how competent they are. And most human beings need that kind of reinforcement. So I think that's a good point to sort of push them into reminding that socialization is part of our profession and a part of our required competencies.
There's a question in the chat about restorative relationship building practices. And I'm wondering if Brooke, Dr. Guerrero, can share what you're doing at your site in terms of facilitating relationships.
Oh, we're not getting any sound. Guess you'll have to type it. I always have trouble with my audio on Zoom. Yeah, it's usually the earphones. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I went through a restorative justice certification training last year, and we received a binder. And in restorative practices, so much is about relationship building, developing inclusive practices, finding ways for folks to bring their identities in ways that feel safe to them. They can share as much or as little as they'd like. And so I have several activities and prompts that we use. They can be as simple as asking folks at the beginning of meetings, like what emoji best represents them, or what what is their favorite childhood toy. Like they're kind of things that probably most people use, but it's just using them very intentionally and always centered around connection and relationship building and allowing people to bring in their identities. So I have a number of kind of activities and relationship cue cards that are funny that they can actually, or it's not funny, but it's funny to have cue cards. And folks can pick a number and I just like pull up the card and then they just read the prompt. That it's kind of like maybe if anyone's played the Ungame, for those who are working with children and youth, like my agency at West Coast Children's Clinic, where you just get a prompt and are allowed to share out. So we can't do restorative circles, obviously, via Zoom, but I follow that format in terms of turn taking and using the prompts.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Now people are going to ask you for a copy of your cue card. So.
Yep.
I can email them to you. I can email them to you guys. We used an outside consultation company called Circle Up, and they trained folks at our agency and gave us lots of. I highly recommend outside consultation around it. It was worth the time and energy to put into it.
If you have any resources that you'd like us to share, feel free to email them to me and I will make sure they go on the website. Thank you.
Okay. I'll email you, Shona. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would encourage others to share resources if they have them too. I'd love to see what people are doing. Something I learned last year through COVID, we had weekly meetings for a while with our intern cohort, and it was more like me getting on Zoom with them, and it's like, how's it going? What's up? What do you need? And trying to be very thoughtful and attentive. And kind of at the end of the year in exit interviews, I got feedback that they really appreciated us trying to do that, but some structure would have been really helpful because they were reluctant. They didn't really know how to respond to like, how are we doing? Like they're doing okay, but it's really hard. So having activities or something like this with some structure, even games, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, someone has a question in there about can we make that mandatory? And I think Wayne sort of addressed that earlier with strongly encouraging and then saying, this is your time, it's protected, and we hope that you will be there. So I don't know if other people have requirements for that. Usually after that cohesiveness develops, there's no one will ever miss it, but it's getting to that point usually takes some effort, and virtually that's going to be a little bit more difficult, I'm sure.
I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of people are using the lunchtime to be away from technology too. So how we can balance asking them to be via Zoom lunch versus time to be a little bit away from technology and all of those things. So I think it's a matter of balancing that out.
Right. Yeah.
That's such an excellent point, I think, to ease the Zoom fatigue. And I feel like we started out the year trying to be very mindful about that, and we have since slipped. So for example, at the beginning of the year, I scheduled every hour and a half that I had them on, I gave them a half hour off. And we changed the duration of all our seminars to 45 minutes. So they would have 15 minutes in between, and encourage them to sort of follow those practices with patience as well, so that there isn't as much sitting in front of the computer for hours at a time. We also give them permission during our meetings to turn their video off if they need to. So we know that you're there, we know that you're listening. If you need to, turn your video off, that's fine. And take advantage of that and model that for them by doing it ourselves if we need to.
I think we'll be moving to the next topic here, unless there's any other comments on this area here. Speaking of stronger together and working together to get this to moving forward here, what other training programs exist in your geographical areas? So this actually has come about a couple years ago. So APPIC was faced with the dilemma that some of our programs only had one intern for the year. And so this, as you all know, the imbalance has shifted quite a bit. And there are programs that ended up, I think that first, about 2 years ago, it was around 12 or 15 programs. I don't think it was that many, but somewhere around that, there were a number of them that only had one intern. So we had to come up with some interesting ideas or ways that socialization could be increased. And we put them in contact, or we encourage them to contact programs in their geographical area. And you can go to the APPIC directory online if you aren't aware of all those programs. And these days with Zoom, you can go all the way across the country and find similar programs. If you're a community mental health center and you're in rural Colorado or rural Iowa, there might not be another one in town, obviously, but there would be perhaps in another county or a few counties away that you can now connect your interns with some of those interns, whether you have one intern or if you have 3 interns, that you can begin additional socialization opportunities for what are the burning issues in community mental health or inpatient care. Are you all seeing inpatients? How are you managing that? How is your hospital or clinic managing that? So you can connect with other training programs, and most training directors are very open to that. And you can certainly make that as a option for your current trainees to connect with other trainees out there for, again, this virtual hour of socialization with just one intern, or increasing your current intern group of interns and awareness of what else is going on out there and connecting with other sites. There's not going to be many conferences. I know there won't be any for the rest of this year, and probably not for the beginning of next year either, for your state association or local association outside of being virtual. So they might be able to connect that way as well. And you can go to the APPIC directory and you can actually search on either your state, or if you're from a larger metro area, you can search on that metro area and those programs will pull up. Or you can go to the advanced search feature and you can pull up those sites that are community mental health or inpatient psychiatry, and it'll pull all those sites for you. And you can download that as an Excel spreadsheet as well and be able to use that to connect with. This is a good thing, because even some of your seminars, I can't imagine why we are recreating it if in 50 different sites in your state and 750 sites across the US and Canada. You may have some very interesting seminars or et cetera that others might be interested in participating as, or observing, or viewing your recorded session if you happen to record that as Zoom. So this pandemic is giving us some options to become very innovative, and perhaps you could not necessarily market it, but at least make those resources available. The APPIC website does have a training resources section there, and we're more than happy to post any of those kinds of materials or links that you might have to these unique opportunities. It's just an issue of finding a good connection and willingness to do that. But collaboration is something that we highly value. And during this last few months, March, April, May, June, July, it's been extremely important for especially our inpatient units with psychiatric, our children's hospitals, or inpatient either kind of went off the radar for folks. Our trainees had to be on site and feel protected with PPE, and the collaboration of what are you doing and how are we doing it seemed to be very helpful. But if there are other ideas about how to collaborate, please speak up or put something in the chat there that we've missed. APPIC has wanted to make sure that socialization continued for those programs with one trainee, and now it's a similar situation. How do you promote socialization with your interns when they have no opportunity to physically be in touch with each other for the most part, or avoid that for the most part? And we want to make sure that, and you've already given us some really good ideas here, but if there are other things that come up or you begin to recall that, please feel free to share that with APPIC and we can put that on our website.
My favorite pandemic silver lining has been to actually invite speakers to my seminars from across the country, colleagues that I've encountered in through other circles who are doing interesting work or who I think would have something to offer for my trainees. So I feel like this virtual world is allowing them to kind of build their network in a way that in-person seminars didn't necessarily permit. So inviting speakers from across the country who can come to a seminar that or I might have given myself, for example.
The other responses out there, but collaboration is important, and the fact that you're on this call probably means you're already got that at the top of your radar, so that's great. So spread the word that people need to continue to collaborate and perhaps visit this resource on our website if you run across those folks who are looking for ideas.
And we have a guidance document that will be coming out in the next few days with some concrete suggestions and some links and resources. We'll send that out via the Match News website.
Yes, and as Shona said, there is some silver opportunities here, silver lining opportunities, and we want to remember our good friends and colleagues who have been decimated by this virus as well as natural disasters. Especially Puerto Rico has come up with a number of challenges over the last few years and would welcome some collaboration and assistance with that, as well as any of those recent disasters in California fires and Iowa storms kinds of things. So they may be down for right now, but and losing some opportunities. And if we can collaborate or help them, that'd be great. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide here.
So this question is for me, and we are wondering from the perspective of the APPIC board, what additional didactics or resources have you put in place for this year, given the likelihood of, given the disruption, I'm sorry, that question is off, the disruption of clinical supervision and services continuing throughout the year. So what else have you trained them to do? And also what else can we provide for you as you support your trainees in this process? I see a comment on training on best practices for teletherapy and assessment. Is that something that you've provided? Those sound like great ideas. Do people have particular websites or trainings that they like? Are these all the APA trainings that are listed on the website?
They have a number of resources out there. I had to give my first MOCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment, virtually the other day, and it was very interesting. And you can actually do it virtually. They just have to have a pen and paper and be able to respond to it. So there are innovations, and Pearson also has some resources out there for virtual. I haven't gotten into it yet to see what kind of assessments you can do, but they're a little more complex, especially when you get into block design and those other kinds of things. But they have provided these resources, and they are available out there.
Right, for telehealth, breaking it down into, it's not quite this simple, but the technology and actually how do we, connect and provide the therapeutic services remotely. But then what are the unique factors that we need to pay attention to when somebody is engaging in services from their home and what's going on in the home that you can't see or not aware of, or if you're providing from your home, what's that environment? And so all of those things. I think just doing it online can be useful, but then we also have to train our supervisors. And in a lot of our sites, and mine as well, is we have some experience doing this, but not extensive, and certainly not the entire staff. And it's been a crash course in learning how to do this.
Something I'd like to add that I transitioned to in the spring, making use of some time that we had together. I meet with my trainees weekly for professional development. And what I did is I assigned them each a week. They ended up doing 3 presentations, and it had to be a professional development topic. And they came up with some topics and resources that never would have occurred to me. So I was able to use their creativity. So for example, we had a whole conversation about dress in professionalism. So what do you wear on top? What are you wearing down the bottom? And so one of our staff actually did a little survey of staff, and we found out of the generational differences, who was comfortable wearing shorts, who was not, who still dresses up for work, who does not, what do people wear on the top and the bottom. So it just turned into a really lovely conversation about professionalism. And other topics that folks, that we had, where folks included things like podcasts. So we listened to a podcast about starting a private practice, about the use of social media in psychology to either to have a presence in social media. So we reviewed different kinds of social media postings. We had invited speakers. We had conversations about salary negotiations and had guest speakers come to that. And that even led to a really depth conversation about the values and worth of money, and you know, how do you ask for money? How do you set your salary? So things were able to go a little bit deeper, and there were prompts through podcast or videos or just other, or people, guest speakers, that I think really gave, I think, richness and depth to what otherwise would have just been me talking and sharing something, but the incorporation of other people, which has been alluded to already, has been kind of fun. So yeah, just using their creativity, because they certainly are a different generation. Some of our trainees that have access to a lot of media.
Thanks, Mary. There's been some very good discussion on the chat about people asking for less, or feel like they're asking less from trainees because of all the stress and the issues involved with virtual kinds of things. And it's very difficult to find that balance, because you want these high need achievers to be able to do the work and more work than you require of them. Usually that's what I expected from my trainees, and those who could do that were great, and those that didn't had minimum requirements to meet. So finding that balance, I think, is very tricky, especially given that we're off-site and people are having difficulties finding that balance. I can tell you that trainee difficulties are not going away just because they're allowed to Zoom in as opposed to commuting every day, that there are still some difficulties out there with competency attainment, professionalism. And so those things mentioned by Mary and others are very important, that we continue to require all of our trainees to meet the objectives and goals and competencies that are required by the program. So I'm hoping that programs continue to focus on quality and recognize that it is different, and it is harder to sometimes assess that virtually, but it's important to stay in the loop and stay connected to trainees to see where their stresses are coming from. Sometimes it's personally, sometimes it's the patient population that they're not used to seeing. So it's a fine line to make sure that you as training director, as well as your supervisors, are attending to those issues during those conversations.
Thank you, Jeff. You know what, as we think about professionalism and communication, it's and competency in these areas, it seems like this telehealth piece and the virtual piece adds so many more layers to boundaries and appropriate behaviors and what you share. And so evaluations, I think, will be so much more nuanced than we're used to.
You know, all of these comments are very interesting. And one of the things that happened at the beginning of transitioning from providing services in person versus telephone or telehealth is that, you know, we had a meeting and we said, okay, let's think about you as future psychologists and how you're going to contribute making protocols or doing new things for the staff. And maybe in the future, in a leadership position that you're going to have, you will have to come up and respond to a national crisis. So what are the tiny things that you can do today to, as postdoctoral fellow or intern? So they come up with this idea of, well, we have to focus on how we're going to provide services to patients now that we are doing this for telephone. And it was a very interesting dynamic, and everybody distributed a topic, and they gave their peers training in the best practices to, for example, work with kids using the phone or working with older adults by phone. And that was their tiny contribution to the changes in their system. So I think that as directors and supervisors, we can make all of these changes part of their training and actually having some sort of feedback that we can provide them, and including those things in their evaluation as contributors, as a leaders, or creation or contributing to the program development.
Okay, I'm going to move us to our next slide.
Actually, there's a question in the chat
Okay.
that maybe we could talk about. So how are people managing responses to interns traveling when doing virtual therapy? For example, being on vacation and still having appointments, so they're not fully engaged. So at our site, we have required that when they are seeing patients that they need to be in state. And we encourage them now more than ever, taking time off is important. So if you're taking vacation time, take vacation time. Don't expect that you will work while you're away. Just treat it as vacation time and use that as a way to take care of yourself.
Right. We approach this, and I think many VAs are similar. We have, interns have to fill out a telework agreement, which basically states what is the office that they're working in remotely, and they can't shift it to certainly out of state because there's prohibitions about seeing people out of state. But they can't decide to even go state. They're going camping and they're going to do some work while they're camping. So it needs to be their telework office. We did make some minor, exceptions this summer when George Floyd was killed, and we had some interns displaced and we're staying in hotels, that we made some exceptions around that. But for the most part, that's the agreement that is made. And I think that it's a good idea to exert some control in that realm.
Dr. Livesay made a point about that their interns are not allowed to provide telehealth across state lines. And when APPIC gets questions about that, we strongly encourage them to check with their jurisdiction because, as Dr. Livesay says, that intern is practicing under your license. So it's really your license that the other jurisdiction wants to know about. So you as the supervisor, licensed supervisor, need to make sure that that out-of-state jurisdictional licensing body is okay with you you supervising that intern providing those services. So I am aware that this is actually happening, and there are sites that have cleared this and are okay with this. So whatever your site's policies are, you should follow them. And if you need some exception to that, you make sure that you check with your legal, your human resources, as well as those jurisdictional bodies that you can find at asppp.org about the licensing and the COVID-19 relaxation of some of those rules and requirements state by state. So I would get it in writing from those state boards that that's okay, that they're going to allow you to supervise an intern that's seeing someone across state lines or across country lines for our Canadian friends there.
It also came up for us that we needed to check with the insurance policy that covers most of our services and whether they would reimburse. So that was another layer that we hadn't really thought through. But the answers became much clearer once we, checked with all of the different regulatory stakeholders. Jada makes a great point about how so many of our trainees are much more isolated from other trainees of color and from their families if they're training in a place away from their support systems, and how this inability to access your vacation presents another challenge. So I'm wondering if people have had to deal with that or address that in any way.
Just clarifying that, within the United States, you may take a car and travel to another state where your family's at, but for international trainees or people outside of the United States, it's just impossible right now to travel to some places in the world.
We have just a couple minutes left, and I wanted to show you the last slide, which has some links and some resources. The additional guidance document will be out within the next few days. Please feel free to check out our website. There's website materials for consortia, which have been doing this socialization piece for years. And have some ideas that might be relevant for your site. If you need some consultation with a board member, our IPC mechanism is a great way to reach us. We will continue to post events and resources via Match News, and it's really gratifying to see so many of you using the members news listserv and posting there. Stay tuned, keep checking back into our website, and we hope to see you every month. If you have ideas for future chats and the topics, please let us know.
Did you want to advertise the mentor program?
Sure. Every time we do one of these, I am struck by what wonderful ideas we have. I know there are a number of our existing mentors on the call, so thank you. But we have a robust mentoring program where we try and connect newer, less seasoned training directors with our well-established training directors. And so if you would like to get to know more people in our community and share that wisdom, please email me and I will add you to our mentorship list. I have a number of people waiting for mentors right now, and would love some new mentors. Thank you.
So we have posted on the website the previous meetings that we had for virtual recruitment and selection and standing up for social justice. Those are on the website.
Yeah.
And then coming soon, the new and improved APPIC will be on August 28th at 3 p.m., I believe. So stay tuned. And thanks again to everyone for participating. And it's been a great discussion, I think.
Thank you all for the helpful comments. Take care.
Jeff, you can turn off the recording, I think.
Thank you.
And Jeff, my apologies. I didn't delete all of those old